You are listening to Creating Active Lives with me, Sarah Bolitho, and my regular weekly guests, and we are all here to share the research, the science, and the strategies, as well as some of the fun, to help you to create a more active life. Hello, and welcome to Creating Active Lives with me, Sarah Bolitho, and my guest this week, Claire Winter, and I am so excited about this episode because it combines two of my absolute passions. And if you've been listening for a while, or if you know me, you'll probably be able to guess what they are. Claire is a word creatrix, am I saying that right? A storyteller, a creativity and a writing coach. She's also an award-winning podcaster, so no pressure for me then. But Claire uses a blended coaching and mentoring approach to ignite her clients' creativity so that they can share their authentic voice and story with the world. She's a former journalist, having worked at ITN in radio and television. And this is something that I think, a lot of people think of activity as being physical movement, but activity in the form of creativity is a really important brain activity, isn't it? And it's something that we really, really, I think, need to do more because it's such a powerful tool, however you use it, whether it's writing a journal or whatever. So we'll talk a little bit more about your creative journey in a moment and the sort of things you do. But do you want to add anything about yourself before we really get going?
No, I loved your introduction. Thank you very much for having me. And love to have a fellow, person who's absolutely, as passionate about walking and writing as I am. And I think it's accessible to all of us. And this is what I love about walking and writing is they're both free. Obviously, you can look to a mentor or I run writing circles, so we write together. So there's something really nice about being held in a space, whether it's online or in person, where you can all write together. And the reason why I came up with the creatrix journey really was having written for a living for a very long time. You start to get tired or uninspired. And what I found was when I went out for a walk that my writing was more creative and I felt more inspired and connected and in flow, that wonderful space where time kind of stands still. And I decided to combine the two. And we've had amazing results from people that have done my retreats or online courses. People have written poetry, people who were told at school that they were rubbish at spelling or writing, people who say, I'm an accountant, I'm not creative, have come away with a different perspective because they've spent time in nature and calmed their nervous system. And, this isn't just, listening to a podcast, walking your dog kind of time spent in nature. It's actually connecting with all of your senses and literally sitting under that tree or giving, tree huggers are allowed, giving that tree a hug.
It's so important, isn't it? And I mean, I love walking. It's one of my absolute passions. And, show me a path and I'll walk along it. I walk, here, there, everywhere, anywhere. And I love writing. Writing is, if I had the ideal job in the world, it would be to be able to just write. And for me, I've written books, I write regular blogs, articles, I write training courses and things like that. I think sometimes when we talk about writing, people think of that kind of more formal style of writing, don't they? Rather than writing for the sheer joy of it. But it could be journaling. Yeah. One of the things I write, which might sound really, really daft, is I write daft poems for my grandchildren, which I'll then record myself reading and sending out. So I think we need to move away from writing as this very formal activity, don't we? And into just writing as fun as release or formal, whatever you want. What sort of writing?
Yeah, definitely. And
I was going to say, what sort of writing do people do?
Yeah, definitely.
When they work with you?
All sorts, but what tends to happen is with the online writing circle that I run, we go for a walk and they listen to an audio, and so then we have some inspiration. We usually pick up something from our walk and we write about that. So often it'll be very nature inspired. It's quite often therapeutic writing, like people use the safe space. We never record it to kind of process thoughts and feelings. People were feeling upset about the Israel and Palestine conflict. We talked about that. We wrote about that, using nature as an inspiration. So there's lots of, not saying that we're always looking at the geopolitical situation in the world, but there might be another time. Like, I love the turning of the seasons. I love it when, you've got an equinox or something like that really signifies the move from summer to autumn. So we'll talk about that. So we're talking about living seasonally. We look at the moon cycles, all of those things, because for me, that connection with nature, it's only a very short amount of time that we've actually been indoors. We were, for millions of years, we spent time outdoors. And, we recognize as a human more shades of green than any other color because of the amount of time we've spent outdoors. So I think that connection with nature can be the missing piece when it comes to, I'm not saying it's the only way to get creative, but if you are stuck in front of a keyboard and you do have to write something, taking a walk around the block, taking your shoes and socks off and walking in your garden, if you've got restricted mobility, these are the sort of things that you can do. I took someone forest bathing the other day who was on like a scooter, like his mobility was restricted, but he still took part in the nature connection exercise because he could stand under a tree with the help of his scooter, so this is all things that are within our reach, which is what I love.
But it is that connection with nature that helps. I think it does it switch off our conscious brain and give our subconscious, I don't know, there's a definite connection, isn't there? And it's so important that we spend time out. I know for me, I love going walking. It's absolutely wonderful. And you're saying about somebody who's got limited mobility is still enjoying it. There was an amazing story recently about a woman who had a really bad climbing fall. She ended up paralyzed, and hiking mountains and things was her thing. This is in Colorado, which is home to a lot of mountains. And there's this whole team, the Lockwood Foundation, they got together and they worked out a way of getting her to the top of one of the big mountains in Colorado. And it was teamwork. And the joy on everybody's faces of just being out there together. And I think this is where I'm really interested in what you do, because I think that togetherness also, it's not just a connection with nature, but it's a connection with people on a nature level. I can't think of any other way to put it. I was going to say visceral.
It really is. And it sometimes when I look at it and I think what I'm asking people to do on my workshops and online is so simple, yet we do not make the time to do it. So sometimes we do need to pay for this beautiful experience of, being given permission to sit under a tree, to do a bark rubbing, to write a poem about the experience, to share what it feels like to be held in nature and what that can do for your nervous system. It completely calms the nervous system. Your parasympathetic system kicks in. People start to breathe more mindfully. Obviously, this is something that we would do out in nature. And, forest bathing is a real thing Shirin-yoku in Japan is prescribed to people. And there's clinical trials where someone's blood pressure after 2 hours forest bathing has gone down. There are other countries that are prescribing time in nature. Like, you literally can go and have a nature dose. But for me, I'm like, well, just go and give yourself one, give yourself permission. Put it in your diary like you would a meeting with a client or a work project, and say, I'm going to go and spend some time in a wood today.
But it's so important that people kind of learn how to do this. I think it's innate, but I think it's a skill that we've lost. We've lost touch with it. We've lost the how to do it. And I think, like any other skill, having somebody help you find the way, help you get back in touch with that, makes it much easier, because it's very easy to say, go into the forest, but you sometimes just sat there kind of thinking, well now what am I supposed to be feeling? Whereas somebody who is guiding you can take you through and kind of bring that out. And I think, it's that inner connection. We can walk into forest and be outwardly connected with it, but it's that inner connection that that we've lost the awareness of. I wouldn't say we've lost it, but we've lost the awareness and we've lost the ability to really perform.
Yeah, and there's some simple things you can do, which is kind of a sensory exercise, which is what forest bathing principles are based on, which is that you notice your surroundings through all of your senses. You know, what am I touching? What am I feeling? What am I smelling? You know, what would this earth taste like if I were to eat it? You know, like literally activating each sense. And that can really, again, just makes you notice the robin sitting in the bush, or the berries on the tree, or the beech nuts on the floor, or the little tiny mushroom growing, you know, in a little crook and cranny in the woods, or whatever it is that sort of catches your eye. And what I like to do is get people to bring a notebook with them, and then they can just sit and write about that experience, about being held in nature. And again, that it brings them back into their body, rather than that kind of, you know, I feel like a right fool sitting under this tree or hugging this tree, you know, whatever it is that we're doing, you know. So I think it is giving yourself permission. And there are, you know, when you work with busy professionals, they feel guilty about going for a 15-minute walk in their lunch break. And I'm like, you're doing, everyone, your body, your clients, your colleagues will thank you for it, because you'll be calmer, you'll be clearer, you will feel happier, you know. So there are all these benefits, aren't there, to making sure you make time for it. And like making time, like you say, like if someone's listening to this and goes, I don't like writing, I don't feel creative, like just journaling, you know, just start with something simple like writing. You know, like The Artist's Way is a brilliant book, and she advocates doing morning pages where you just write about anything.
And it's not always easy to get started though, is it? Because some people feel quite uncomfortable putting their feelings down on paper. I hike in various places, and I always take a sketchbook with me, because although I'm a writer, putting my feelings down on paper I find very difficult. But I love hiking somewhere and then sitting and looking and then just sketching it. And I started out doing this, and I was very much trying to capture it. And then after a while I thought, no, I'm gonna sketch kind of an emotional perspective of it, if that makes sense. So instead of it was you know, instead I started copying the leaf and everything, and then I'd start, okay, now how am I feeling about this leaf? And it changed it completely. And it really helps me to kind of unlock my creativity, if you like. You're right, we're very often, we're very professional, we're very businesslike, and we've lost that importance of creativity. And I think we often end up with kind of limiting beliefs, is that we should be doing this or doing this or doing this. And I there was a saying the other day, I think it was adapted from something else, but it was, you know, spend at least 20 minutes a day in nature. And if you haven't got time to spend 20 minutes a day, you need to spend at least an hour. And
love that.
I
exactly.
think it's adapted from something, but it's that kind of principle, isn't it? If you don't have time for something like this, you need to make time. But, you know,
even more so. And I love that idea of sketching, but you could do that with words. So you could take your notepad and paint and write what you see. And that takes people out of the, I'm not creative, I don't know what to write, I don't want to write about my feelings. So you're using the sensory experience that you've just described, drawing. And I would say to someone, if that's what floats your boat, I know people that just take pictures on their iPhone. You know, I don't advocate going out with a phone. I'd definitely put it on airplane mode so you're not getting inundated. But I love taking pictures of nature. That's one of my nature connection exercises that I love sharing. I have favorite trees. People who know me on my Instagram will go, oh, there's her favorite tree again. You know, and I share pictures of them. And so there's so many different things you could do. Like you can create a nature painting. So you could, and this is something to do if you've got grandkids or kids or your younger people with you. Say, let's gather things that are fallen rather than picking things and create a nature painting together, or we create one each, take a photo of it, And it's a remembrance of that walk. So that's another really easy nature connection exercise that you can do collectively. And again, people just really like being inventive, of creating a circle and putting different things in it. And then we know that, and then it stays where it is. I mean, sometimes we bring them back as well and do it back where we hold the workshop. So yeah, there's just so many simple things we can do. And for me, it is about that simple act of choosing to connect with nature in a mindful way.
And that is so important, isn't it? And I've just mentioned limiting beliefs, and that's just bringing me on to something, which is I've just given an absolute classic example of a limiting belief, is that I find it hard to journal. I find it difficult to put my emotions down on paper. Yeah. So, and that probably is hindering a lot of my creative expression, from the sense of really just free expression. So how does that combination of walking, of writing, and the creatrix journey, how does it help people overcome that sort of limiting belief and really flow into creativity?
Yeah, and I think really what I just described, that sensory experience. So starting off with an exercise like that takes you out of those limiting beliefs and that structure where you think, I'm not creative, I can't write about my feelings. So, and then just play. This is an act of creativity and play, and just see what comes out on the page. So you might say, the meandering stream, and then you brings back a memory of childhood, of playing, in the mud with my sister, and then there's these threads that come in, and you end up writing about how you're feeling without even noticing, really. And I think it is just, see it as an act of creative joy, of expression, and there are no boundaries with it. You don't need spelling, you don't need grammar, you don't need punctuation. No one needs to read it. I mean, what I find though is many people are very proud of what they've written and they want to share it with the world, but you can keep it for yourself as well. And I think that's that, write like no one is watching. Literally, no one's reading. Watching is the wrong word. Write like no one is reading it, because they're not. And write for you, and and give yourself permission. I think all it is giving yourself permission that I can write about my feelings if I choose to.
I think, it's so important. And something else you said about, it doesn't matter about spelling and grammar, because I do a lot of technical writing and articles and things. And obviously spelling and grammar matter. And I think sometimes because we have, if you are a professional writer, if you like, and you do write technical stuff, you've learned that it has to be grammatically correct. It has to be technically correct and everything. And it's sometimes hard to step away from perfection, if you like, or as much as you can, into that imperfection, because we're often brought up as well. It's got to be right. It's got to be finished. It's got to be perfect. So how do you kind of let go of that professional side of writing, if you like, and embrace the fact that you can spell it, you can put commas in the wrong place, nothing matters. How do you shift from one to the other?
I think that's sort of using free writing is what they call it, which is literally you start writing about anything, which is also the principle of morning pages, is that you just get everything out of your head. So you could call it a brain dump or something similar. And I feel like the walking piece often gets rid of you're using that cadence of your step and the movement to process what you're thinking. So by the time you sit still, you don't need to do that kind of brain dump. But let's say you're in your office before you're writing, if you want to write about your feelings, or you don't want to do some technical writing, just to free write. And again, it's about permission. It is literally giving ourselves permission to go, I'm going to write about whatever I want. And if you don't know what you want to write, start off with, I don't know what to write. I don't know what to write, and stuff will drop in. And if you don't know and you're still struggling, find an object and do that sensory experience, because it's a technique that lyricists and poets use, because you're starting to use adjectives, like you're saying the crinkly leaf, and you're using all these adjectives and words that you probably wouldn't normally use in your day-to-day life, and that can spark inspiration. So it's just using really simple techniques just to trick your brain into doing something in a slightly different
So
way.
it's like you say, going for a walk, because I think the walking part of it is important because it's that kind of physical thing, and it's a great way for people to start being more active, is almost to have a purpose rather than just saying I'm going for a walk. So could you, for example, collect, like you say, things that have fallen? Could you collect a few things, and then if you're really stuck, just write down, just write down words that describe them. So there's no joined up writing or anything, so to speak, but it's just like
no, just use it as a simple writing exercise. And I would say, you know, what feelings does it evoke? You know, often time in nature, you'll remember something from your childhood or another moment. So you could just, but you could just use it as a description piece. And many people get so much from that. You know, like I took out a massive group of coaches, and one chap, and you can often see people that are struggling. They're like visual, they're active, it's not a comfortable place for them. And he picked up a conker, and what he wrote was beautiful. And it was about how he used to pick up conkers when he was a child, and how he's really sad to see them left on the ground because children aren't allowed to play with them at school anymore in case they hurt each other. It's just like, but it was a reflection. It was thinking about his childhood and a fun memory, but also the frustration of bringing up a child in the 21st century and the things they're not allowed to do.
Gosh, it was finding. I just remember it was finding the right one, and then you had to get your hot knitting needle and
how sad they don't do that.
It was just,
I'm sure they do at home, but I don't think you're allowed to bring them to the playground, and certainly not his child's playground.
Exploratory activity, and of course you were just out there gathering. I mean, I know when my kids were younger, we'd come up with carrier bags full of them, and I mean, there is a point as a mother where you just think, what on earth am I going to do with all these blinking bags full of conkers? But it was the sheer joy of collecting them and finding a big one or a small one and a perfect one. And again, it's that when you watch children collecting conkers, there's just this innate joy in finding them, in looking for them. And there's no such thing as a perfect conker or an imperfect one. They're all amazing. It's just some are more amazing than others, but it's that kind of sheer joy of collecting them. And that is part of the activity, is running around and getting them. And you're not thinking about that.
Yeah, certainly. And I remember trying to polish them with furniture polish because I thought it'd make them more shiny. And then people used to cook them because it'd make them harder and all that sort of thing. So it was lovely to see someone kind of go through the process of going, I have no idea what I'm going to write about. I'm feeling really uncomfortable too. This great exploration, a great discussion about children and what they're allowed to do and not to do. So, you know, so you'd be amazed at what it can spark in you. And you know, there's so many, there's a great study, you know, there's a Stanford University study that was done some years ago that says your creative output is boosted by 60%.
Wow.
You can be 60% more creative after walking. And that was even on a treadmill. So if you combine walking with nature connection, you know, that's even better, isn't it? You know, it's like you not only you're getting that time out in nature. So I feel like, you know, for me, do not feel inspired walking on a treadmill, but if that's all that's available and you've got one in your garage or your office or whatever, get on that as well. You know, so I think it is just thinking about how you can fit these pieces in your day. Like one of the things that I do, you know, with some of my coaching clients is write 3 things that you're grateful for. Again, like give yourself something easy to write about. 3 things that you've done today that make you happy.
Yeah.
You know, you can do it in the morning or in the evening. You know, that is a really simple journal practice. You just have it by your bed and that gets you writing. It could be 3 sentences, but you've written 3 sentences that are not about work, that also, you know, gratitude is proven to also make you feel better. So there are all these little things that you can, little habit tweaks that you can bring into your working week that will make life more joyful and creative.
And the walking side of it, the walking in nature particularly, is so important, isn't it? And I know there's been lots of studies done on walking outside and walking inside or within like shopping malls and things like that. And even though like the physical benefits are similar, walking outside, biophilia theory really, isn't it?
And there's another study, I'm sure you've heard of it, where if you're a hospital patient, if you can see trees from your bed, you're more likely, you recover quicker.
That's it. Yeah.
I mean,
but I was going to say, we want to encourage people to walk, because whether you want to write or whether you just want to release emotion, if you like, walking is such a good thing to do. There will be people out there who, for whatever reason, cannot get outside. They may be recovering from an illness, or they may have a condition which means that their mobility is minimal, or they might need help. Is this something that you could almost imagine yourself walking in a beautiful natural setting? Would that be as good?
Yeah, I think so. I think visualization is very, very powerful. Things like Insight Timer have loads of beautiful meditations. Often people have nature, water, different elemental things in the background that you could listen to. You could ask people to bring some foraged nature things into the house that you could look at, feel, touch, write about. You could bring in plants into the house as well. That's also something you could do. If you can get yourself into the garden just to sit for a bit, or getting bare feet on the ground is very, very beneficial, even in this cold weather. So I think there are a few things you could do. I definitely would look at there are some great visualizations out there that would definitely bring you to nature. And again, close your eyes and imagine yourself in nature as well. And again, try and get some green plants in the house. I think
there are people for whom getting outside to walk is very, very tricky for whatever reason. But I was just thinking, if you have a friend with a GoPro, you could get them to record a walk that you'd love, and then you can watch it and sort of be there.
And like the bird song in the morning, like someone recording that for you would be lovely. Just even the sounds of the forest can be really, really peaceful. So there's a lot of things people could do, definitely, even if they're not so mobile.
It's definitely that walking, that connection, sort of the conscious connection with nature, but also stimulating the subconscious connection as well, getting that back in. Because as I say, I think it's there in all of us, but we've lost it because we spend so much time inside and on screens like this and things like that. But it sounds like it's that walking that you could go and just sit and it would be pretty good, but equally it would be something that the movement is so important.
Yes, certainly. And I think so many people, I saw Julia Bradbury the other day. She's written a book called Walk Yourself Happy. I also went to see Ray Mears, who's written a book about woodland foraging, woodlands in general. And he was talking about foraging, all the different benefits of the trees. So there's so many different things, so many different aspects that you can look at when it comes to doing these things. The other things that I love to do for me personally, and they're all things that you can do if you're not so mobile: breath work, there's the box breathing, or breathing in for 4, holding for 7 and breathing out for 8. All of those things are calming your nervous system down. Cold water immersion, so a cold shower or a cold bath can have obviously take advice. Don't just stick yourself, research it. I'm not a Wim Hof instructor or anything like that, but they are all things that I have found personally in midlife that have helped my mental health and also my creative health. So they are all very simple things that you could also integrate, like, remembering to breathe. I remember the first time I realized I wasn't breathing properly, and it was an absolute game changer. So there are all these simple things that we can integrate, and I'm sure you've talked about them before on different podcasts, but it's finding what works for you. But being mentally and creatively healthy will mean that you live for you'll have a long and happy life.
And I think that's so important, isn't it? Is finding what works for you. If something doesn't work for you, don't try and force it. Try something else. There will be something, and you might have to try a few things before you get there. Clay, it's been really, really good talking to you. Can you Can you just share some of the sort of transformations that people have experienced? Obviously no names or anything, but just anything major that you've experienced.
Yeah, definitely. We've got a poet who did my writing course and is still currently in my writing circle. So she writes poetry every day, or when she can, and she didn't know she could do it. And that was has made her very, very just happy to be creatively writing. I've had people change careers, start projects. Someone was creating a blog about converting a barge. So that was her creative outlet. So we kind of come up with a creatrix plan. So it doesn't necessarily have to be writing. For some people, it was other creative expression that they decided. Someone else decided to become a sound therapist and do gonging and help people that way. So people it gave them permission to think about what they wanted to do, what made their soul happy, or their heart, if you don't think in those terms, but what made their heart happy, what creatively sung to them, because we all kind of know, and when you give yourself permission to explore it. So and also we've had people write blogs, all of those things, all those nice map out books, the more conventional ideas. Lots of people came up with book ideas and they've mapped out their chapters.
So it's just, let's face it, walking is a wonderful thing to do, writing's a wonderful thing to do, and when you put the two of them together, and it is transformational. I'm a great believer in that.
It really is, and it really is. And I would, if I can get one person giving that a go after listening to this, I'd be a very happy woman.
Where could people find you then if they do want to give it a go and find out more about what you do? I will put all the links and everything in, but where's the easiest place for them to find you?
Come and find me on creatrixjourney.com.
creatrixjourney.com. I will put all the podcasts in, and you've got a free creative writing guide as well, which they can get from the website, which if people do want to give it a go, then it's a great place to start.
Yeah, and there's a deeper explanation of free writing. There's a little visualization that you can listen to. So there's lots of bits in there, and then you'll be on my email list, and I tend to write about my own creative journey and give writing tips and different things in my newsletter. So there's a weekly newsletter that I send out as well.
Well, Claire, thank you so much. To be able to talk about two of my favourite things, walking and writing, has just been absolutely amazing. And it's actually made me realise that I do need to do more kind of free writing and more creative writing rather than the slightly more formal stuff that I do. So thank you so much for coming along. And we will, I'm sure, all be really, really interested in what happens next for us all. Thank you. You've been listening to Creating Active Lives with me, Sarah Bolitho, and my guest, Claire Winter. We will see you all very soon. Thank you for listening to Creating Active Lives with me, Sarah Bolitho, and my guests. Join me each week for more on how to create and sustain everyday activity, and follow me online at Fitness Career Mentor or Fabulous if you're interested in career development and more on creating active lifestyles.